Yeah, it was really, really exciting to, I guess, be at the forefront of the industry. And, back then it was about convincing people why they should, be on social media, why it's such a great place to market and advertise their business. Nowadays, things have changed. Of course, people understand the power of social media and why it's such a critical part of any media plan.
Jonathon Tanner, it is great to have you here on eCommodics. How are you doing today? How are you feeling?
Yeah, really well. Look, great to be here. It's really it's exciting to have a chat with you.
It's great to have you here. I was workshopping different ways to introduce the show. Today was supposed to be the first day of it because I realized as I asked people how they're doing, how they're feeling, I'd already asked that before I turned on the recording. So I was trying to think of some way to keep the redundancy down, and I did not succeed in that. So that is my meta-analysis for the day. So Jonathon Tanner, first question that I'm going to pose to you to get the ball rolling is for you to tell us what you do and what are you up to these days?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the CEO and co-founder of a business called Social Media College, and we're based out of Sydney, Australia. And we are exactly that. We're a school that educates people on how to use social media marketing to grow their business. And we've been around now for about 6 or 7 years. So we've been in the market for quite some time. And since then, we've really kind of expanded all of the different courses that we offer and really kind of expanded who it is that we teach. And some of the courses, a lot of the courses are delivered through our partner universities and colleges, but also we do a ton of stuff direct to students as well.
Yeah, I'm going to make sure I put a note for that as well, just to follow up on the relationships between your school, which I'm assuming it's fine to call it a school, and then the relationship with the other universities. That's a fascinating aspect in of itself. But the first thing that sticks out to me is that this is really the first formal qualification anybody anywhere in the world can get a degree in social media. Am I getting that right?
Yeah. So that's I guess the first product, as we call them now, because we have a pretty wide suite. But the first course that we developed was the Diploma of Social Media Marketing. So in Australia, what they allow private companies to do is actually go and accredit courses in new and emerging areas that the government itself is not yet covering. And because of the rate of change that's occurring in the economy, we identified that social media in particular was under-addressed. And so we went and we accredited the Diploma of Social Media Marketing. And it sort of operates a little bit like a patent. It's a 5-year patent. It's a rolling 5-year patent. So every 5 years, we need to go and resubmit to the government to get it reaccredited, which we just recently did. And with that particular course, the diploma, it was, the first and only formal qualification in social media marketing in Australia. And at the time that we first accredited it, we haven't done the analysis for a while, but at the time that we first accredited, we couldn't actually find any other formal qualification anywhere in the world that did the same. It was really, really exciting to, I guess, be at the forefront of the industry. And, back then it was about convincing people why they should, be on social media, why it's such a great place to market and advertise their business. Nowadays, things have changed. Of course, people understand the power of social media and why it's such a critical part of any media plan. And, now it's really about making sure that we keep the course content as up to date as possible, which is a huge challenge for us given the rate of change that there is. But so with that particular course, the diploma, that's the one that we in most cases we go and partner with colleges. They're called registered training organizations here in Australia, colleges essentially. And some of those colleges are feeder colleges into universities as well, which is really, really exciting to work with some of the universities. And the way that works is we provide them with the course, but we sort of call it like a turnkey solution. Typically some of the more established colleges out there, they're just not great at innovation, and they're also, well, they are. And look, they admit it as well. They're the first ones to admit it. And so we come in, we give them this solution that really makes it really, really easy to deliver this course. And then we support them with sales and marketing as well. And it's a business model that's really resonated with all of our partners. And then over time, what's happened is we've now started expanding into short courses. So non-accredited courses, more focused on particular topic areas like LinkedIn marketing or Facebook advertising or Instagram marketing, whatever it is. And now what we're finding is that a lot of those partners now are adopting those courses as well. So it's been fascinating journey for us over the years.
Yeah, there was definitely a distinction there that I wanted to make sure that I got, which was whether all of the services or that I had seen on the website were all commensurate with the diploma, or if the diploma was a separate thing, and then you can take all the additional courses. So that's one thing I wanted to clear up, make sure it's also clear for my my audience as well. And then in the midst of that, the journey of getting this accredited was also something that you're describing. And I guess I was imagining that there was much more of an adventure to it, where there's an area where you have to really prove and validate that this course has enough value and enough impact in in society, in business, and culturally to raise itself to the point of accreditation. So what was your pitch when you were describing this, and what information were you using? What data did you have on hand to say, look, this is something that needs to have the accreditation for it?
Yeah, I probably massively oversimplified the process that we had to go through the first time around. And it was that, it was looking at as many different data points as we possibly could to try and justify why we felt that there was a need for a formal qualification in this area. So at the time, it's going back a few years, at the time, we were looking at, growth of revenue, even of some of the social media platforms, to say, hey, look at how much money is pouring into the ad platforms of these guys, but also growth in number of users, time spent on social media as well, engagement levels, et cetera. And so we had to work really, really hard to demonstrate to the Australian government why there was a need for this formal qualification. Second time around, all we had to do was put the enrollment data in front of them. I think now we're up to something like 5,000 enrollments in the diploma overall, which is an incredible number when you think about 5,000 people that we've been able to impact with this, just with that qualification, let alone some of the other short courses that we have. And I think when the second time around, when they saw the volume and the demand that there was for this particular area, I think it was a bit of a no-brainer to reaccredit us the second time.
Yeah, I think one thing that comes to mind is the stigma attached to what one might consider to be a social media user. Obviously, millennials, pre-millennials, post-millennials, for one, and I think beyond that, I think social media for a long time, it doesn't really have it anymore, but for a long time it did have an insiders club feel to it. Like the only people on Twitter was this insular group. Same would go for Tumblr, not so much. For me, Twitter was really the one that sticks out. But that is just not the case at this point. At this point, social media is it's embedded in each person's life. It's not to the extent of, I'm building a brand and I have my Twitter routine and I have followers on Instagram, but even something as simple as grandma posting about the cookies that she baked, to come up with the most pedestrian analogy that I can. It's all over. It's hard to imagine anywhere that has escaped that has not also escaped the digital world altogether.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you've only got to look at the usage statistics. I think we're now, it's over a third of the world's population is now an active social media user. They're using it actively every single week. And, the numbers just keep climbing. Facebook numbers just keep climbing. If you look at the baby boomers, that generation, they're the most fastest growing and the most active on that. So it certainly has gone mainstream. We're now looking at penetration into all age demographics. And I think most people understand now it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. And if people are spending a bunch of their time on social media, then obviously it's a good place for brands to be active and have a really, really big presence.
So the other thing that I made a note of earlier was just about working with other schools. So from the perspective of a student, and regardless of what I'm enrolled in, I mean, there's different degrees of how I think relevant social media is. I'm just going to take a shot in the dark and say somebody who's focused on engineering probably isn't on social media as much as maybe somebody who's in athletics or really anything more public facing. So all of that aside, how does a person discover the program and sign up for that, and what do they get out of it while also balancing their own course load?
So I like to think about the education market in two ways, and it's a really simple model, but it kind of makes sense. There's a proportion of the market out there who undertakes study to signal to a prospective employer that they have a certain skill set and that they are therefore, worthy of a particular job. So the diploma product in particular is focused on those people that are looking for either a career change or they're looking to kind of kickstart their career. Because in getting that piece of paper, that formal qualification, it's a signal to employers that they are equipped to do the job well. On the other side, and really this is the big trend that we've seen in the education market over the last 2 or 3 years, is this kind of move away from formal qualifications for a lot of people that traditionally would do them towards what we call short courses, right? And with short courses, unlike formal qualification, which are about signaling, short courses are about skills, right? So you got signal versus skills. Skills is like, look, I don't need the piece of paper. What I really, really need is rapid upskilling. Again, I already flagged this, we're seeing just this incredible amount of change in the economy, and it's so rapid that people just don't have time. And one of the challenges of the diploma product is it's a 9 to 12 month course. And, our best-selling non-award program, short course, is called the Social Media Marketing Intensive. And what we really did is we kind of compressed the diploma into this 9-week program, and we delivered it, very differently. We do, 4.5 hours of pre-recorded video content, and then this live session on Zoom with all the other students in the intake. We put them into WhatsApp, and they're doing activities together. So this concept of social learning and accountability, and it's been able to achieve really, really high completion rates, unlike, other online self-paced courses, which hover around, sub 10%. Education is one of those things where, people really want change, but education is often one of those things that you keep trying to get to at the end of the day and you never end up getting there. And that's why, the first generation, we call it kind of online education 1.0, was really about this online self-paced courses where you come in and it's a little bit lonely. It's up to you. You're kind of in there. It's just you and the computer screen, and you got to work through the content at your own pace. We kind of do things, quite differently in that regard. But yeah, there's definitely kind of two parts of the market. There's the skills, which is like, hey, teach me as quickly as you can, but without compromising on content, what you need to learn. And then there's the signal side of the market. That's the best way to, I guess, describe it to people.
That's actually the first time, and I've been through college, and that's the first time that somebody has made a distinction between the two. Because so it's always a can of worms when I bring it up, because the things people you'll understand why I stumble over this as I say it, but. Growing up, I was big into comedy. I watched a lot of comedy on TV. I didn't know exactly where I wanted to go with comedy, but I knew I wanted to do it in some way, shape, or form. And here in Toronto, we have a comedy program. And I was like, well, is that or journalism? But I can't believe journalism even had a chance, honestly. So I go to the comedy program and I get a degree for it. And they tell you pretty much day one, like, this degree doesn't mean shit. So we're like, all right, well, fair enough. But there was the skills development in it. There was the social aspect. And what I appreciated about it in particular was it was like a microcosm for the industry. You got to experience the politics of it, the infighting, all the personal stuff that also comes along with an industry. As professional as we may be, we are still people. And then you get out of college and then you face the real world, and it really does, all of a sudden the scale of it suddenly becomes a lot more digestible. And it's like, oh wow, that really is just a 2-year microcosm. So that's me kind of like unloading about my own experience there, just so people understand kind of like where I come from with these questions. What I'd like to hear about is what what weight you want to see the degree hold in, maybe in 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, what you want to see it do to help continue to legitimize, social media as not just something for fun, but really something that businesses have come to rely on to make the difference between a successful business and a failure.
Yeah, look, I think there was people, I remember 4 or 5 years ago, that were calling the downfall of university and the end of people doing formal qualifications. I think that's clearly not the case. I think that there's always going to be a place for them, particularly, those people that are making a substantial career change, or for professions that require it, I think is one big thing, or for school leavers, like people coming through. What we're seeing though, the interesting trend is this concept of micro credentials. And what a micro credential is taking what was a big, chunky, expensive bachelor program and kind of breaking it down into smaller chunks that allow someone to really kind of, you remember those books? I was probably showing my age. The Choose Your Own Adventure books, right?
I've done a couple of those. Yeah. The R.L. Stein Choose Your Own Adventure book, where every choice led to some sort of brutal murder. Yeah, I remember.
Correct. And you could say, if you choose this, you go to page 40. If you choose that, you go to page 32, right? So I think that's what's kind of happening now and universities are starting to become a lot more open to different models, and we're chatting with a bunch of them about this kind of boot camp concept where, people come in and they do like 3 months full time, and they don't necessarily get a qualification, but they study with the university. So it's like it's a non-award kind of certificate of completion from an awarding university. So I think there's just a myriad of models that are emerging, and it's a really, really exciting space. I think that, what we're going to see over the next 5, 10, 20 years is just going to be a whole bunch of displacement, where existing roles in industries, and this is way outside of social media, obviously we're in a fun and exciting and dynamic space. One of probably the most challenging aspect of our business is trying to keep up with all of the rate of change. But if you look more broadly at the education market, I think that, the degree of displacement and upskilling that's going to be required as a result is huge. And so I think, education is a really nice space to be in.
And, you've touched on, the challenge of how rapidly the industry evolves and how that reflects on what material you want to convey to the students. What I appreciate, to me was something that I appreciated a great deal in college myself too, was that all of my professors, and I don't think there was an exception, all of my professors were also active participants in the industry. And that I think is a pretty significant benefit to being in these programs. To one day they're a teacher, and then someday down the line they could be a colleague or even a peer. And that to me is a source of inspiration. So, given how quickly things can change in the courses that your school is running, so how are the faculty doing it? How are they staying informed and deciding what alterations to make to the program and when?
Yeah, so we traditionally use what we coined as a SMA, a subject matter expert. So we would try to partner up with someone who already has a lot of success in a particular area. Like the guy we're working with, his name's Nathaniel Bibby in Australia. He's the number one LinkedIn marketer with the some awards that are social media awards that are given out. He's won it last 2 years, up for it again the third time around. Right? He runs a LinkedIn marketing agency, and he has 20 top tier clients. So you look at this guy and you go, well, he's at the top of his game. And whatever he's doing, we need to kind of tap into his brain and work it out and get it on paper and get it into a course, right? And there's the content's one thing. I mean, that's kind of, we like to think about that as the meal, right? So the content is the meal, but when you go into a restaurant, it's not just the meal that you think about to assess whether or not you enjoy the restaurant. It's the whole dining experience, right? It's the greeting that you get when you first come to the door. It's the smells, it's the music playing, it's the lighting, it's this customer service, right? So there's a lot more that goes into a course beyond just the content that's in there. There's the whole experience with it. And a lot of it, is kind of tapping into that research around the way in which you can deliver a course to maximize output and maximize kind of mental retention, because and a lot of that's quite tactical in nature. There's certain things that, like, just getting people into the habit of, if they're watching a course video, to write notes, right? So the research is clear that when you write things down, then your mental retention skyrockets. Similarly, we try and get people we have a whole bunch of let's talk activities where they have to discuss what they've just learned or do some type of activity. Let's do it, right? So we have different kind of points at which we jump in and say, okay, it's time to actually apply the learning. Again, your mental retention will skyrocket. So I think when it comes to keeping these courses updated, there's the element of keeping the social media content updated, but then there's also making sure that you're constantly looking at all the trends that are occurring in learning design to make sure that the courses are updated in that regard as well. What's happened, I think, interestingly, as we've evolved and the business has got bigger and the teams got larger, and I've had to, in a lot of cases, I was always the person doing a lot of the courses myself, being that social media expert. I've had to kind of gradually step back from that and push a lot of that onto the team so I can manage the growth of the business. More and more now, we're actually bringing that expertise in house. We've identified that we actually are best placed to do a lot of that desk research ourselves and also learn from the experiences of our students. So that's always a really, really big thing. When we now do a lot of coaching with our social media marketing intensive program, and there's a daily group coaching calls. When someone enrolls, they get coaching for a full year so that we help them with the implementation. And you learn what challenges they're facing. And we're like, okay, well, we need to add in course content that helps people to address that particular challenge, or we need a template, or we need a checklist, or we need a calculator. We need some type of tool that assists them with the challenges they're facing. And you pick up these trends, right? So that's, I guess, one of the advantages that we've had from being large. And SMEs still have a role. Like, we still want to work with people and tap into it, but there's so much more to it now. There's desk research. And unfortunately, we're in a space where you've got so many softwares, social media softwares, that are just so heavily juiced up on venture capital that the content that they're creating is amazing. But part of that is that it's quite piecemeal, and a lot of people will come to us and say, look, I subscribe to this blog and this blog and this blog, and there's the content's great, but I still can't work out what I need to do in my particular business size and my particular industry. And so forth. So a lot of that is kind of looking at the research that gets published, also really following some of the content that the social media platforms are doing. Facebook's got Facebook Blueprint, which is great. They've got the creators account on Instagram. Adam Mosseri is, the head of Instagram. He publishes a lot of great content, on his Instagram profile. So it's just knowing for each of the different social media platforms, what are they publishing? What content are they creating and putting out, and making sure that finds its way into the hands of the students that study with us.
And then a couple of things that stuck out. Chief among them is also, I think, given the material that you teach, there's a heightened dependence on its efficacy because you also use it to promote your business. I keep coming back to engineering just because, I have a friend who's an engineer, and so there's that. But it's fun to me to compare and contrast different courses and the dependency that they have on their own, on the survival of their course and based on the material they're teaching. And good engineers who come out of the engineering program, but engineering is they're using word of mouth. They're using a completely different skill set in order to promote their program. Obviously, being good engineers makes it that just to show I'll just to show my understanding of it. My goodness, I should have picked something in the arts to make it a comparison. Anyways, so I'd like to hear your commentary on your own need to use what you're teaching for the good of your own business, to show that not only can we teach this, we also practice what we preach. And I think in your case, you have to.
Yeah, it's definitely something. If we are active on social media, or if we are investing in paid social media advertising formats, if we are actively emailing to our database, if we are doing all of those things that we promote in our course, then of course that is going to make us a better educator. But it's not necessarily essential, right? So if you look at, and part of, I think, the evolution of our business is realizing that the social media game has changed. That the old days where you used to have as many social media logos as you possibly could on the bottom of your website is no longer kind of really relevant. What we preach really is that you want to choose one or two platforms and nail those and get as much efficacy as you can out of them. as opposed to spreading yourself too thinly across lots of platforms. And if I look at the evolution of our business, we started really, really aggressively on Instagram back in the day when you could actually get some, pretty good results from using it organically. But over time, we've actually transitioned more towards paid advertising formats, and that's part of the process that every business goes through, from startup to growth to scale, is that over time you want to actually start adopting the paid advertising formats and rely less on organic, or organic changes. Organic becomes more about branding and conversion and less about lead generation or direct driving of traffic. And that's kind of the phase that we're in. But a lot of our students are in that startup or scale startup or growth phase. And for them, they don't have a budget to invest in paid ads. And so for them, they have to use organic to therefore generate the traffic and the leads that they need to. So I think, and one of the key personas that we work with, one of the key types of student that we have are social media agencies or social media freelancers. And for them, a common mistake that we see is that they think that, okay, I'm going out there and I'm helping, say, e-commerce businesses with their Instagram organic marketing, for example. And therefore they think because they're providing their clients with help on Instagram organic, that therefore they need to promote their own business using Instagram organic. And I'm like, no, don't do that, because you're going to get judged on how you're a B2B business. You're trying to target other business owners, and you should be on LinkedIn. And that's where all your focus should be, is prospecting and creating content on LinkedIn. And the percentage of people that actually post content to LinkedIn is quite low. So as a B2B business, you can get amazing organic traction on LinkedIn. You don't need to be on Instagram. And they're like, oh, but won't they want to look at my Instagram account to demonstrate my expertise? I'm like, show them one of your clients' accounts. Show them your expertise to prospective clients on one of your existing clients, because they're in the same industry, and that you'll be able to kind of demonstrate your expertise in that particular way. So yeah, I think, just because, coming back to your original question, just because we are social media college, I sort of say to the team, I don't think we need to have this ridiculously large presence across all the different social media platforms. At the moment for us, it's all about YouTube. YouTube and email marketing really for us is just a huge focus area, and we're getting some incredible results out of that, and also out of our SEO, which is outside of social media. We're in a fortunate position now where we can invest a lot into SEO, but that's taken us 2 or 3 years to get there. And then of course, you got the paid Facebook ads, which are a staple in the budget.
What I appreciate about this is I think it's important for people to consider that this is a pretty optimal flow from your organic marketing strategy into paid advertising. Because if I were to, and I very nearly did, jump directly from setting up my business and then just going right into paid ads, not having a social media presence is a pretty significant disadvantage. I would say that the expectation that the general consumer has set is you got to have something. Have a Twitter feed, have a Facebook group, have some means to know that I'm buying from another person. So I don't think it's really viable anymore, and I would be interested in being proven wrong about this, either by yourself, or if anybody wants to email podcast@debutify.com and let me know if I'm wrong. But I think you pretty much have to have your organic side fleshed out before you move into paid ads. And even if it's not necessary, you probably should anyways, because it's just enhancing a lot more of that traffic, and your conversions are going to be better because they're not going right to a landing page and being asked to convert in the first 10 seconds.
Definitely a Facebook page, right? So, I mean, everyone needs a Facebook page. It's a secondary website, and you want to show that you're active, that the business is alive, that it's not some gravestone that has had no activity on it for the last, we call them graveyard, graveyard profiles where there's been no activity for 2 years. People come to there and they go, the business must have died, right? That's not, you don't want to have that. So you need to be posting stuff to your Facebook page, but that's going to be different to your Instagram account, right? So your Instagram account, on your Facebook page, you're being more about community building and more about, providing updates about what's happening in your organization and so forth. Whereas with Instagram, what we promote is that your content really needs to be value adding to people. But Instagram now, there's 200 million Instagram business accounts, right? It has become, the barriers to entry are incredibly low. Anyone can go and set up an Instagram business account. And as a result, you may not be competing with this amazing photographer for directly in terms of what you're selling, but you're competing with him or her for the attention of users in the newsfeed. And so that's the kind of mindset that you need to have if you're going to have a presence on a platform. And this comes back to the narrow your focus, like be on less platforms. And that way, you don't need to be on YouTube and Twitter and LinkedIn, all those. Just be on Facebook and Instagram, or just be on Facebook and YouTube, right? Because if you're going to be on a platform, you're going to get judged on that. Like, people are going to come and check you out. And, if they come to your Instagram account and it's because you've only got 30 minutes a week to dedicate to it, that you've only been able to collect 80 followers or something like that, like, people will judge you. They'll look at that and they'll go, oh, this mustn't be a very good business, right? So again, narrow your focus is probably the best advice I can have. And just understand that because it's so competitive, you're going to need, and the way the algorithms work, you're going to need kind of every efficiency hack under the sun, right? So not only does your content need to be super high value and engaging to your audience, because that's ultimately what the platforms respond to, you're also going to need to, running a business is hard. There's not a lot of time in the day. There's so much to do that you don't want to be bogged down. You want to be walking around with your smartphone every day going, oh, what am I going to post today, right? You need to bulk produce like a month's worth of content or 3 months worth of content, schedule it up using a scheduling tool, and then just get on with your life. It's amazing how many people come to us just in this state of flux and frustration, because they're just like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I spend a half an hour, 45 minutes every day doing a post, and I'm not getting any engagement from it. And I'm like, stop, like right there. That's the number one issue you've got, is that you're not planning your content. You're not thinking about, how do I create this in bulk, and using the scheduling software, because algorithms now, they respond to consistency. So you can't have like 2 or 3 days off. If you're going to be on a platform, if you choose to be on Instagram, you have to post every single day, like every single day. And if you don't, you just don't get much benefit from the algorithm as a result. So narrow the focus and make sure that what you're doing as efficiently as possible is probably the best advice.
And it's good advice, but it's also relieving advice too. The idea of having to hit up every social media platform in order for the business to succeed can be off-putting, and it could be intimidating. But conversely, specializing and really understanding which platform is right for the business. I think the more visual leaning, obviously Instagram is a good place for that. B2B, LinkedIn. My question is, and I'm thinking specifically about Facebook for this one, but the other platforms, I'm sure there's important insights there too. I came up with this in the last episode, it's called the empty dance floor syndrome, where you have everything set up, but no one is ready to take the first, be the first person on the dance floor. And the answer that I had gotten from the previous guest was, eventually somebody gets the courage to look the fool, be in the middle of the dance floor on their own, and then other people start supporting it. So that was one answer to it. But what I'm wondering from your experiences, those initial hurdles to start generating activity, to me especially, it's probably one of the most intimidating things in how to get the momentum going, how to get people to start talking.
I mean, it's a question we get all the time, and usually
everyone's going to go through it.
If you're talking about a Facebook page, for example, I remember when we first started Social Media College, we're like, geez, we're Social Media College, talk about being judged on our social media profiles. We've got 0 people that like our Facebook page. What we did is just actually sent direct messages to 50 of our closest friends and said, hey, can we just get this page going, from there? And then it was all, that's when the content takes over. And certainly now, it's different for every single platform. If you look at, I think everyone needs to understand that there's a bit of a divide between, say, Pinterest and YouTube and all of the other platforms where it's more of a short-term sugar hit. And what I mean by that is that with Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, LinkedIn, you need to be creating content all the time, right? You've got to be really, really consistent. Content's got to add value to your audience. And you just, it's this, a lot of people talk about this content treadmill. It's just constantly creating content to engage your audience, keep them engaged. And if you stop, that's when you get penalized. Like if you think of, and sorry, before I come back, if you think about the other end, if you look at YouTube and Pinterest, they are predominantly search-based social media platforms.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is that people are actually looking for your content. Like we've got this video up, just, hit 100K views. We put it up 4 years ago, right? And we didn't think it was that good at the time that we put it up. We're still getting comments. We're still getting people viewing that particular video, and it's still now driving traffic, right? So if you're a business that has the patience, but it's slow, right? So you post a video and it takes, in a lot of cases, it takes a long time to get going. And then all of a sudden it can actually hit some traction. You tweak the thumbnail to get people to start clicking on it because of that recommendation engine that YouTube has. And it's similar with Pinterest, right? So Pinterest is predominantly search-based. So you've got to understand, you've got to get in the mindset of each of these platforms. They're businesses, right? And they're designed to sell ads. That's their whole purpose, right? Everything they do ultimately will come back in some way, shape, or form to them wanting to sell more ads. And so how do they sell more ads? They sell more ads because people log into the app more often. And when they're on the app, people have a really good experience. And if they have a really, really good experience, it means that they're on the app longer. Right, the combination of those two things, people logging into the app more often and being on there longer, gives Facebook, LinkedIn, whoever, more ad spots. They make more money. Okay, so what these platforms do is they reward people that promote a good experience for their users. So if you're they call them creators, so influencer, right? So if you're a Facebook creator now, or Instagram creator, what Instagram is doing is they're providing all of these tools to creators now to help them monetize what they do, because they've realized, hey, these people are creating lots of really great, high quality, engaging content, and it's adding to the experience of Instagram users, and that helps us sell more ads. And so this big trend at the moment across all the different platforms is around, making sure that you reward creators for the work that they do. And I think if you understand that, like as a business owner, as a marketer, if you understand that's what you need to do, then certainly if you're playing that organic game, where you just need to make sure that you're creating a lot of content on a consistent basis and adding to the experience of users on there, and the algorithm will reward you for that. That's how they promote it. The number one way is to actually give you more reach. That's what the algorithm does. It provides you, it shows your content to more people, and therefore you get free marketing off the back of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing I like going on, what happens on YouTube is, just random videos will pop up, and I'll click on it, and then everybody in the comments saying, "Well, it looks like the algorithm gods have united us on this fine day. Good day to all of you, gentlemen." Just 1,000 people all saying, "Yeah, algorithm brought me here." So it's certainly a real thing for sure.
It's interesting. Like I think that's the other big trend at the moment is just around these recommendation engines, and it really started. I mean, personally, I think YouTube's is the best, but it's amazing how many times you go on and you search for something, how do I schedule an Instagram post? And then 45 minutes later, you're watching a giraffe video, right? So it just has this element of being really, really good at it. And then I think TikTok's taken us engine is fantastic, right? It's just, people are on there and you can see that they just roll through these videos and they're really, really good at suggesting additional content. And you've seen now Instagram is on notice. TikTok grew from 50 million users to 1 billion users in about 2 years. And it took Instagram 10 years to get there. So Instagram kind of hurriedly released Reels. Now Reels is something that's really, really growing strongly, but they're giving more reach to users who are using Instagram users who are using Reels, because they're trying to blunt the growth of TikTok. Right, they're trying to slow down TikTok because they see them as a big competitive threat. And you can hear them for the first time. They're talking about how they see TikTok as this big threat in the industry. And now YouTube's released YouTube Shorts, which is another TikTok. LinkedIn's talking about releasing a short form vertical mobile feature as well. And so I think whenever these new features come up, certainly one piece of advice we always have for people is whenever these new features come up by a particular social media platform, jump on board, because typically the Instagram or the other social media platforms, they will encourage people to use those new features by giving them more reach. And so at the moment, certainly, with Reels, you're seeing really, really good reach, and they've actually turned it down a little bit on the feed posts.
On that, actually, I think this is actually one of the shortest questions I've ever written on the program, which was like, what was your take on YouTube Shorts? So when you see, a feature like that, I think the first thing that came to my mind is, I see that they've also recognized and acknowledged the impending dominance of TikTok. So they say, well, I guess we're going to have to do it too. And I don't know. I'm curious about, I guess, the message that it might communicate to its user base when, on the one hand, a platform is inspired and wants to offer a new feature and a new way to create content, and on the other side, it's almost like an act of desperation or an act of fear, which is, well, now we have to do this too, because if we don't, we're kind of dead in the water here.
Yeah, I think with any industry, like you take a step back from social media, what we're really talking about is advancements in in products, right? Mm-hmm. So their platforms are products, and what has happened, it happened with stories, with Snapchat. Snapchat came out with a new product, a new feature on their particular platform. Instagram copied it. TikTok, has some huge growth. So they kind of saw that, went, wow, that's a great feature. We can add that into Instagram, right? So I think what we're talking about here is kind of new formats, right? And so we would expect that, there will be other formats that come along at certain points of time as well and capture people's imagination, and some other upstart, we're talking about huge companies now. Like Facebook is a massive established company now. And there's always going to be new startups that come along and still share that capture people's attention, because people get, like anything, like any existing product, people tire of it. They get a little bit overusing it, and something new and shiny comes along and they jump on it, right? So I think, to a certain extent, I say, businesses are entitled to roll out new products, new features to compete with their competition. And I think that's what we've seen Instagram do. I think that's what we've seen YouTube do. And apparently LinkedIn is going to do it. Interesting, LinkedIn came along and they tried stories, and stories has been, hasn't really resonated with their particular audience base. And so there's a lot of talk about, do they wind that back? Do they cease doing it? And do they try something like TikTok? I don't know. And it's yet to be seen whether or not YouTube Shorts is something that YouTube has announced they're giving away $100 million to creators, to people to create YouTube short content. I mean, it's insane. I mean, they're dangling a massive cherry in front of people to try and get people to use this new feature in YouTube, because they're realizing that, hey, hold on a second. Whereas YouTube remains the only place on the internet really where people go to watch long form video content. All the other platforms, they don't really go there for a long period. Like when you're watching a video on Facebook, the data is pretty clear. Like people don't watch videos more than like 30 seconds or a minute. Yeah. People go to Facebook Watch, which is this dedicated tab within Facebook, or IGTV videos on Instagram, but it's got nowhere near the traction that YouTube has, right? So YouTube's kind of out there on its own in terms of the place where people go to watch long form video content. Along comes TikTok and just throws this massive spanner in the works. Because of the strength of its recommendation engine, what was finding, even though the videos are only short, 15, 30 seconds a minute or something like that, because of the strength of the recommendation engine, people were watching, 20, 30 of these things, finding themselves on TikTok for an hour at a time, just going, wow, and just, constantly scrolling through or getting these videos recommended to them. And that's a threat. That is a threat to YouTube. It's a threat to YouTube's dominance as a place where people go and hang out and watch lots of videos. So not surprising that they've decided to roll out Shorts.
But on the flip side, with TikTok, because their initial feature is such a specific media format, whereas with YouTube, it's a video, it being a video website, and as you say, it's the only place for long form content. But there is also content of varying lengths. Like the algorithm today showed me a video that was 7 seconds. So I think the conditioning there with YouTube is pretty loose. People might be conditioned to expect long content, 2-minute content. The conditioning on TikTok is pretty well all under a minute. So I do have to wonder where expansion is for them. Like if they might get into image sharing, like with Instagram, or if they could even feasibly go for longer form content. I don't know. I don't see it.
Yeah, it's hard to know. Certainly, if you speak to some of the larger agencies, I think in terms of monetization, I think TikTok's doing a really, really good job, and that helps with with the credibility for it as a platform. You're starting to see larger brands having a pretty active presence on there because, in a lot of cases it's cheaper than being on Facebook. And so that's good. And that ultimately, the more, commercially viable the business becomes, the more they have in CapEx to, invest in improving the platform and rolling new stuff out. So yeah, I mean, it's exciting. We really enjoy just kind of seeing. One of the other big news stories was the removal of the removal of the likes from Instagram, and then the backflip to actually get people to opt out of it. So yeah, I mean, there's always a lot of exciting stuff happening in and around the industry, but it's certainly, TikTok. If I think back to last year, TikTok just changed everything.
Mm-hmm.
For the first time, you've now got what you really had a market that was pretty much dominated by Facebook and YouTube. And then all of a sudden now you've had this new player come into the market, and it's exciting. I think it's really kind of mixed things up. It's given creators, businesses a chance to jump onto a new platform, new trend. Doesn't necessarily mean that all businesses have their audience on TikTok, but it's certainly, a way, whereas some of the other older, more established platforms, it was getting really hard. They're so competitive, so many businesses marketing there. So I think, yeah, it's been a really, really good thing for the industry, TikTok.
Only because I've said it numerous times on the show. I would hate for my audience to think I stopped being a tinfoil hat wearing guy. I'm still a tinfoil hat guy. So, some of the things that I've heard about TikTok and its relationships to, certain countries, it makes it hard for me to want to fully embrace a platform. But what I will say is I have worn down over time, and little by little, I find myself using TikTok more, which is to say the time between it's installed on my phone and not installed on my phone is getting more and more protracted. So in another year, we'll see what where I'm at with it. But I mean,
and look, if you asked me, 12 months ago, my answer would have been, I don't think TikTok will be around in 3 months because I think the government's going to ban it, because of its links to China. So, don't know. I mean, I think they've become a large enough business now that they see that as a risk, as a major risk, that they don't want to do anything that would potentially result in the app getting banned in a particular geography, because it would have pretty catastrophic results, outcomes for them overall. If you started seeing those news headlines, particularly in any of the top OECD countries. So, I think they've probably done enough now to assure the governments of the respective countries that all of this data isn't ending up back with the Chinese government. But that trust is broken, then it could be a domino. You could see, but we'll see, I guess.
Yeah. It's I mean, what I will say, and I'll say it positively, about the format. It could have been TikTok, could have been any other number of names or companies or countries that have done it. But the thing that surprised me, even talking to some of the people who are TikTok experts, is that what people thought they were going to use it for is so far removed from everything that it is capable of. We talked to a lot of dropshippers on this program, and dropshippers will point to several things like, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. So not only has it turned into a great place for fun, but it has also turned into a pretty surprising place to be exposed to highly condensed information. And being somewhat politically leaning, what I was probably the most pleased with was I was seeing both sides of an argument. And I don't want to say what arguments are going on. I think most people recording this know exactly what I'm talking about, but I saw both sides. And that to me was huge, because not every platform is actually so open towards letting both sides of an argument be played out.
Yeah, look, like any new business, there's always the kind of early adopters and the advocates and those that come in and really lead forward the penetration of it, and then over time, as you've experienced, it's as adoption has grown, more and more people are jumping on board and going, hey, there's a lot of legitimacy related to this particular platform. And I think if they keep doing what they're doing, then it'll become a mainstay in the competitive landscape of different social media platforms. So yeah, it's yeah, as I keep saying, it's a pretty exciting space for us to watch. I think one of the best things about what we do is is the need to constantly update our courses, because it means that people need retraining. People come to us, we've had people graduate from our course, our social media marketing intensive program. And then 2 years later, they're coming back and they're doing it again. Like, hey, I want the fresh content. I want to go through the experience again. Or there was a whole bunch of stuff that I didn't implement the first time around that I want to come back and I want to do it properly, this time around. But one of the most challenging things about what we do is the rate of change in what's there. So, and it also means that, I guess one of the upsides is that when we go and speak to, the colleges, universities of the world, I mean, they look at the social media space and they go, wow, there's so much change there. We're not even going to try and touch that particular space. When you talk about, gardening or something that doesn't have a ton of change over time, something that's mostly evergreen, then a lot of the traditional education institutions go, well, I'm happy to invest the resources because I might do this course and know that I've got 3, 4, 5, 10 years out of the course. With social media, I mean, we write a course and sometimes literally we're crossing the T's and dotting the I's, and then something happens and we've got to go back and we've got to change the content in the course because of some evolution or some update from one of the platforms. So yeah, it is an exciting space, very dynamic, and which has its challenges, but also a lot of benefits for us as well.
I consider myself a fundamentals person. A lot of this comes from my competitive game experience, because what you find in games is that they get changed a lot by the developers. A certain ability is too powerful; the need to bring things in line, and what that does is you have this meta to the game where mastery of it is ever changing and evolving. And I actually find that kind of frustrating. If I would always say, if somebody were to make chess today, they would have to undergo changes because people would say the queen is too powerful. But the less something changes, the more you can fixate on the fundamentals. So like we were saying with gardening, what are the fundamentals of gardening? Well, you got to understand soil, understand weather, understand tools, and then you specialize into the kind of flowers or plants or crops or whatever it is that you want to do. But with you and in your program, have you gotten to the point where you can assess or surmise what are the fundamentals to this, or are even your roots and your foundations still up for routine changing?
We talk a lot about principles and platforms.
Yeah.
Principles and platforms, and that's a really, really nice kind of framework, I think, for most of our students to wrap their heads around, which is, hey, there's a bunch of stuff that you need to do that applies to any platform. And that's going to be things like, strategy. It's going to be things like content creation. It's going to be things like, what's the post-click experience from social through to your website, thinking through things like that, using lead magnets, et cetera, right? So there's a bunch of principles that it doesn't really matter what course you're delivering, that they kind of need to understand. And then where a lot of the change comes in is in the platforms. That's where, you have this kind of mixture. If you don't have a good strategy, I think you're really going to struggle on social media, right? So you've got to define that strategy, but then the tactical implementation of that can change, and it can change, in the space of months, depending on, because what they decide to do with the algorithm. The challenge is that they just don't tell you, right? So they'll make these changes. They provide more and more. They're providing hints. There's a bunch of accounts, and I mentioned Masseri. If anyone out there who's an Instagram marketer, jump on and follow Adam Masseri on Instagram. He's the head of Instagram, and they use his account to provide a lot of guidance and a lot of, do this kind of myths and legends type stuff where he clears up a lot of rumors that circulate about how the algorithm works. And so, like, for example, the other day he was talking about hashtags. A lot of people use hashtags in the first comment, and he actually said, no, don't do that. Like, put them in the actual caption as well. So that sort of stuff is really, really great. They provide guidance on how their algorithms work, but they don't tell you exactly. And the reason they don't tell you exactly is because if they did, everyone would copy it, right? So right. I think if you're going to use social media to grow your business, I think you're committing to lifelong learning. You're committing to, yes, come in, learn the fundamentals, learn the core principles, but then, come out the other side of one of our courses, you're ready, you attack, but you've got to understand that things might change and they might change quite quickly. And so you've got to make sure you're committed to keeping abreast of whatever the changes are.
And I think that in itself is a core fundamental as well, is conditioning people to observe changes, being able to adapt to them. I mean, one might say that should be a fundamental in many schools, but as we were discussing, it's actually not the case, depending on how ingrained and how rooted things are. Okay, we both did a plant pun without realizing it, because you said evergreen with gardening, and then I said rooted. Okay, anyways, we're pretty close to hitting an hour, and I have to say there's certainly some other things on the mind. One thing I wanted to make sure I did, just in case I got to let you go, is I did want to hear a case study of one of your students, because I think for a lot of people, I think it would just be helpful to hear what exactly happens to somebody who, in particular, who's coming to the program. What happens to them on their way out. I mean, there's people they come to come back to study as well, continuing the learning. But anyways, yeah, I would love to hear a case study.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you three, and they kind of talk to the different cohorts of students that we
Excellent.
have. I think first is that free social media freelancer or agency owner. We had, this is very, very recent, and we've got a ton of them up on our website if anyone wants to go and have a look at some of them. But very recently, this lady named Claire, she came to us, and one of the key things we preach is you need to focus on a particular niche, right? So the niche for social media service providers is typically a combination of targeting an industry and targeting one type of service, like Facebook ads or LinkedIn organic or YouTube organic or whatever it is, right? So try and narrow what you do, because it's less competitive. You can make more of a name for yourself and charge a premium over and above what everyone else is charging, right? And so she came in, and I think she works in the hotel industry or something along those lines. And she came to me, and we have these kind of mentor calls, one-on-one mentor calls. And she said, look, I'm thinking about doing, Instagram organic for pet brands. And I said, look, I actually, as a management consultant, I actually worked on an M&A transaction years ago in the pet industry, and it's huge, right? It's a massive market. And I was like, wow, that's a really good niche. And I think there's a lot of pet brands out there that could afford to pay you good amount of good fees per month. But I said, what experience do you have in the pet industry? And she said, I have none. And she goes, I just love dogs. And I'm like, okay. And then I was like, look, I think it was the hotel industry. I said, look, tell me about that. She's like, yeah, I worked in it for 20 years and blah, blah, blah. And she went through it all. And I could just tell that there was just something there. She just wasn't, she'd left that industry. And I said, I was kind of pushing it towards her. I said, look, you've got so much experience there. You got to understand, if you're going into an industry you don't know anything about, forget social media, you're going to need to learn that industry. You're going to need to learn the competitive dynamics, the pricing, et cetera, related to that industry. But I could tell she just wasn't passionate about I think it was the hotel industry anymore. And so anyway, funnily enough, it's one of those kind of serendipitous things. One of her friend approached her and said she'd put herself out there that she was doing this social media course on LinkedIn, and approached her, and she was actually from the pet industry, right? You talk about manifesting what you want. And anyway, she managed to sign up this client while she was doing the course on $2,000 per month for 12 months, right? As the initial term. So she already got 5 times her investment in the social media marketing intensive program while studying the course. She got out of the course, and I think 2 weeks later, she signed up her second client. And that's kind of our model, 5 clients, $2,000 per month. That's kind of your initial starting point to get your agency off the ground. And then that's the point at which you go, yeah, I'm kind of hitting that $10,000 per month mark. What's next? Do I want to grow into a larger agency, or am I happy, with what I've got with the selection of clients that I have? And so she signed up a second one. So, I mean, she's looking at 10x on her investment in our program in 3 weeks after graduating from it. So that to me is the best case study I can give you. Another guy, I'll never forget, his name was Adam, and he came into our course, and at the time we weren't actually teaching Messenger at all. Came through the intensive program, and then went and got a job as a messenger marketing specialist. And I was like, okay, well, we didn't teach you it. We mentioned it, we didn't go too deep on Messenger. And he was like, no, look, what you did is you provided this injection of confidence and structure so that I could go and talk about, they weren't looking for someone, they were looking for someone at an entry level. They don't necessarily want someone who understands all the intricacies of automated messenger marketing. What they were looking for was someone that could talk the talk and understand the social media marketing industry. And so he's got this job, and now he's one of the top messenger marketing people in the country. And we chat all the time. He's a lovely guy. So look, there's more. You can jump on my YouTube, but a couple of examples of great outcomes for our students.
It's fantastic to hear, and it is especially encouraging to hear that things really took off for that lady. You said it was 3 weeks. Yeah, that's not that's not too bad. That's not too bad at all.
I mean, these are the ones we actually put tags on them, like one to watch. And then we like to get in contact with them 12 months later and hear about all this. There's so many we've lost count. Yeah, it's great. And education is this wonderful thing. And people who work in education, it's just kind of, you get this little warm, fuzzy feeling, because it tends to be, an investment that people make, or a commitment that people make, that puts their whole lives off on this. It's like a fork in the road, puts their life in a whole new direction. And when that new direction turns out to be something that's really, really positive and, has an improvement in their life, when you hear those stories, it's the most rewarding thing in the world.
It's wonderful to hear. I mean, I do relate in a smaller scale, because, I here in Toronto, I was able to help out, a few people on a person-to-person basis, understand podcasting and how to get into all of that. And so, just to back you up on that point, knowing that we've been able to, unlock information for other people, it does go a long way. So I feel you on that. All right. Well, we've hit our hour. I've got one more question for you. This one's, in the interest of fun. So this was somewhere between the 15th and the 17th time that I installed and uninstalled TikTok. And I saw this video of, it's hard to describe, but it's like, it's just rows and rows of people. And I think they're saying that it was in China, and they're all behind a ring light, and they've all talking into their phone. And it's like this, it almost had like a militaristic feel to it. And it's like a military academy, but for influencers. And I tried to find out more about it in preparation for this, but it's actually somewhat hard to follow up on. Either way, the question it raises is, looking into, the next 4 or 5 years, beyond just TikTok, do you see there being a saturation point where it gets to the point now where you have one influencer for every 2 people, or where do you kind of see the social media landscape going from here?
I think I use the words, we used to call them channels, we call them platforms now. So
sure.
So really what these companies do is they create these social media platforms, and they let the market kind of tell them exactly how it works. But like we talked about, it has become incredibly competitive. And of course, in any kind of competitive market, if there aren't the returns there for people, then they're going to leave that market, right? So I think of course, we're seeing now the commercialization of influencers. But of course, it does reach a point, not just on one platform, I think across the entire industry, where it does reach kind of saturation point where people go, well, the returns just aren't there for me anymore. And you do tend to get people that kind of push through that point and then go on to be very successful with what they do. Or you get people that, drop out. Certainly, if you look at the data, and this is one of the key things that we look at, is surveys that go out to all the top companies, medium to large companies, particularly in the US, and asking them about, do you intend to increase? The key question is, do you intend to increase your investment on influencer marketing next year? All right. And for the last, I think, 10 years in a row, it's over 80% of people have said yes. Right. So obviously, if we always look, where are the dollars going, right? So if people are putting more and more money, we're talking about, influencer marketing being a $15 billion industry, it's absolutely huge. And so I think if people are continually pouring money into influencer marketing, then obviously it's working. Okay. And as long as it's working, as long as there's money pouring into it, you can expect growth. So that's going to be my forecast. I think we're going to see it's being tidied up as well. That's the other big thing. A lot of the platforms where you can go, like the Airbnbs for influencers, a lot of those platforms are now working a lot harder to vet the influencers to make sure they're genuine and they're authentic, and that's improving brand safety. It's improving confidence in using influencer marketing. So my prediction is you ain't seen nothing yet. I think it's going to continually grow, and those dollars that influencers are making are going to attract a whole new breed of. And don't forget, we got this generation of people coming through now who have never known anything but social media. Right. So and these are the ones where they're so savvy, right? It's ridiculous, right? So you got this whole generation just about to hit their kind of 20s that have known nothing but social media. And when they do, I think you'll see even more dollars flowing into influencer marketing. So yeah, it's going to be a big space.
Two things. One of the main things that really stuck out in your answer is that not everybody is going to follow through. Some people do, and they become a success. Some people, they find a happy place where maybe it's just a hobby to them. And it did remind me that there are a lot of industries already, facing this. If people want to get into acting, it's fairly entry level, but not as many people make it in acting as they do people who try out. So there are a lot of parallels to this, and I had forgotten about that. And then the other thing that I stuck out, and this is just completely me blasting off into space at this point, pardon the expression, but I would like to see at what point when people are going to make sci-fi television or sci-fi movies with social media present, because you notice they don't really have that too much of a component, but it should be there because it's hard to see us. Like you said, it's hard to see us going away from this.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard some pretty crazy predictions in my time, and it's hard to know. Like, it's hard to know where it's going to end, but certainly what you're talking about, I think, is this concept of lo-fi video, right? Where what works, even for marketers, in particular, what works on social media is when it doesn't necessarily have a great production value, because when it's user generated, it comes across as more authentic and more at home, more native to the feed than it does, when it's this kind of high production value. And so, coming back to your example, I absolutely, like, you just think, at what point does a lot of the things that we see currently in video, which are, high production value, how do they start to actually bring that back to more of this kind of, and that's kind of where TikTok has thrived, in this concept of comedy, right? So you think, comedy videos, I think that's happened there. So why it can happen anywhere, right? It can happen to any of the genres of video that we have.
Well, I imagine that we can keep on going with this. So we'll let it go for here, but doors open. More than happy to have you back down the way and see how many times I've installed TikTok since. My prediction is about 25, 26. We'll see. Yeah. Because like I said,
as you can tell, it's sorry. So
I was just saying, each episode lasts longer. So
right. Yeah. We'll see where you're up to. But no, look, I love talking about it. It's one of my favorite pastimes, sort of predicting what's going to happen in the social media marketing industry, and also just, telling people what we're seeing is the best tactics and tricks that we can use. I mean, we didn't touch too much on e-commerce, but certainly would, be happy to come back and talk about some of the key marketing tactics and strategies that we're seeing, students have a lot of success with e-commerce. So yeah, I'd love to come back.
Okay, fantastic. Well, the final wrap-up question, it's in two parts. It's if you have, say, like a Chinese proverb or like a saying or quote you'd like to share, you're welcome to do so. And then let the audience know how they can make contact.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I'll address the second question first. So just jump on www.socialmediacollege.com and you can check out what we do. And yeah, if you're keen to get in contact, please do us. And you can find us on all the socials just by searching Social Media College. Favorite quote. So I've got one. I've got a couple. The first is from Nelson Mandela, and his one was, your fondest dreams, your greatest expectations are never met. Remember this: the greatest glory of life lies not in never falling, but rising every time you fall. And I think, business owners, marketers, same sort of mindset required, which is look, you're gonna encounter challenges along the way, but it's not about not encountering those challenges. It's about learning from them, understanding they're a gift, and then persevering through those challenges. They're the people that come out on top. It's the ones that just roll with the punches and just keep going, right? Don't try and aim for no failure, because that's an impossible task that's there. And the second one is that the one more related, and we have a bunch of t-shirts and caps and all this sort of stuff. And this is probably our favorite quote at Social Media College, which is the best way to predict the future is to create it. So I'll leave everyone with that.
Excellent. Well, I too feel that is best left to our audience. So to everybody, as always, it is an honor and a privilege to collect this information, use it for my own benefit. Going to just being transparent about that and share it with all of you as well. One more thank you to Jonathon Tanner for the road. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise. And I'm looking forward to the next part of this conversation for sure.
Awesome. Thanks, Joseph. Had a great time.
All right, everybody, take care, and we will check in soon.
Platform on it. So are you able to join our forces and we can...
Hey, this is Joseph from Ecomonics. Just wanted to thank you for being here and for giving this content your time and attention. I hope you learned something. I can say with certainty, I have learned something with every episode that I have done, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. There's a couple things you can do to help us out. If you want to check out the audio content, we are available on all major podcast platform distributors. And while you're there, give us a 5-star review. It helps a lot. And while you're here on YouTube, there's a lot of things you can do to help out as well. It's not going to take very long. Subscribe to the channel, hit the like button for this episode, and hit the notification bell so when we have new content for you, it's going to be at your doorstep ASAP. Lastly, this podcast is created by Debutify, the best Shopify template available. It is 100% free for you to start, and it can change your life. It can make you so much more free than you are right now. So if this episode wasn't enough to convince you, I think a few more might do the trick. So have at it.